I know you've been a Freemason for a very long time, but what were you like before you became a Freemason?
You, you sure you want to hear all of that? But I'll restrict it, okay? Well, as you know, I was born and raised in Georgetown, Guyana. Guyana is top of South America, a British colony before it became independent. So we speak English, and our pattern system of education, etc., was based on the British model, similar to the other islands. Like, well, Guyana is not an island. It's similar to Trinidad, Barbados, Jamaica, so on. British territory. And I don't know how to summarize this very quickly because you visualize the running around and the difference between a British colony and the ethnic composition of the territory. At the top of the pyramid, you had the British administrator. There was the British governor. That is prior to '63, I think, before when we got independent. The British governor was head of government. We owed loyalty and sang the God Save the Queen and so on, like everybody else. Fast forward and walking the streets of Guyana, going any place, going to offices. There was predominantly a brown hue. Brown meaning a mixture, a melange of black people, descendants of slaves, about half of the population, and another half of the population was East Indians from India. Then there was a melange of Portuguese and Amerindians, and nice ethnic blend. But why I'm saying all of this is to present a picture that we did not have a tableau of white all over the place and the general character of subservience. I don't know. I never lived in the southern states, the United States. I don't know, apart from what I read about. But this is not only, the white man was there, but as governor and so on, as I repeat myself. But we did not have college in Guyana. In the 50s and 60s, there was no college. There was free elementary education. Elementary education, you went up to 13, but you had to pay for high school. And I had to pause right there to bring you back up to date, because I am about 2 years older than all of my peers, because there was a little intersection there in my life. I was the firstborn for my family, 8 of us. And I knew what dirt poor was, because my father was a postmaster. He was not a postmaster then, he was a postal official. And the first 3 in the family, myself and my 2 sisters, we were 8 altogether, we saw a total different lifestyle of living on little. And then my father got massive promotion, and the final 3 in the family, the change was dramatic. And so I could not go to school, to high school, right after elementary school. I had to work and so on. So by the time I got to, when I was 15 at high school, my peers were 13. So that's something. I was always a couple of years older than my peers. However, somewhere along the line, somebody told me that I had a little bit of brains. Went to high school and did reasonably well. Then started to school to teach. But I wanted to point out here is that nowhere along the way had I ever thought about Freemasonry. For me, it was after I started as a school teacher, before leaving for England to study. it was the big boys. The big boys, not necessarily white, black, or brown, but the big boys was the people of certain social status, the sergeant major, the upper tier of the commercial banks and so on. They were doing those funny things and making those funny noises, is my general perception, these lodge men. Well, again, no thought of that, but I'm jumping here, finally I just realized that to get into a good job, and here there is the social consciousness of how do I start being one of the big ones in my early 20s, as a teenager, late teenager. I had to go abroad if you want to go to college. Well, I did that. And in 59 I got on a boat and went to England, changed my life. Spent 10 beautiful years in England, and everything changed. Well, most everything changed. The British colonies you were a British subject, and education was free. You have the minimum standards to get into the college. You got accepted into a college, and you didn't pay for education. This is not to talk about that British system, but just to tell you. Well, I stayed in England and got a degree in business administration, and I speak French. Got married there and everything. Got married to a French lady and got some nice children. They're grown and grandchildren at this stage. But then the change is about to take place. Now, time for me, after having spent 10 years in England, nothing about Masonry has been mentioned yet. Got back home and got recruited to go back to Guyana, now to be a senior official in the public service. So I became something totally different now. I got a young wife and 2 young children, and I'm back now to be marketing manager for the airline. And that's because I got a year's training in France on airline management and so. And then I know, Jeff, that in the United States, there is the jargon in Masonry that you do not recruit Masons. I am here to say that in Guyana, it's not even disguised. If there's a young civil servant returned back and young officer, people know about you and you get recruited. So that people that I know, Masons that I know, invite me for a drink. I can't remember precisely. And you lobby. Well, Joseph, you're back now. You got a nice, good job, and look, for example, start calling a few names of some people I know: Mr. Jack, Mr. X, Mr. Y, Mr. Sam, Mr. Prince. They're all Masons. You need to join. We would like to get you, blah blah, and explain the virtues of Masonry. But for me, it was always a vehicle, one of the links for the social status. That was what I was thinking about. The people who were prestigious, in my opinion, most of them were Masons. Cut a long story short, I became a Mason.